If you have any questions today, we are going to make sure we leave some room for that towards the end. Just like Peter said, feel free to drop them as well. But if you aren't familiar with BigCommerce, we have prided ourselves since 2009. Of course, our core mission has been specifically focused on delivering the world's best open SaaS platform for all stages of growth. So I think this would complement most of y'all, just depending on the size of your business, as well as the range here. If you are continuing to grow, definitely a great place to continue to do that on BigCommerce or the platform that you may be using. With that, my day-to-day also includes helping others launch. So if you are migrating from a different storefront, from different places like WooCommerce, as well as Shopify, that's typically who I am seeing, as well as those merchants that are maybe suffering from the pandemic and decided to go full on with e-commerce or just start their business online. I also do audits that would increase SEO rankings as well as conversion rates. And from here, really when it comes to working with these different merchants, I do get to have that exposure of different sizes as well as different industries and needs. So we'll just go ahead and hop into our wholesale industry trends. I am going to be using both B2B as well as wholesale interchangeably. So if you do hear me say B2B, just a heads up on that. But most companies are selling both wholesale and D2C, and about 34% of B2B businesses have an equal focus on B2B and B2C channels. So just depending on where you're at, if it's a good time for you to consider B2C, that's something that we will always encourage. With our platform as well, you do have the ability to have multiple storefronts that also share inventory. So if that's something you're ever interested in, there is going to be a way for you to do that natively. And with these trends, this is specifically case studies from our B2B team here at BigCommerce. So when it comes to becoming the most popular route for B2B, McKinsey shares that 41% of leaders say it's the most effective sales route to beating out the in-person and video. When it comes to focusing on B2C at the moment, if you are also wanting to take a look at how you can expand that way, it's really just going to matter if you are looking into something just with something smaller, or if you are looking at something local. So that way you can kind of figure out what works for y'all. Now, with the different demands that you might have outside of that for direct to consumer, we also have merchants such as Solo Stub who will also sell on Best Buy or Dick's Sporting Goods. So just depending on where your level is at on that, you can kind of grow with your comfort. So popping into here, we have the old way of wholesale as well as the new way. So here on the left side, you do have the differences between slow, agile. Of course, you are going to want to make it a bit quick and efficient for your customers. We also have the seller driven. Now it's going to be a moment for you to go ahead and see that self-explanatory. Let your customers control this. Static and overwhelming catalogs. So with that personalization, you can segment your customers into tiers, have specific pages, as well as categories that are dedicated to them. So beyond that, you can make them feel more valued rather than just, a general catalog. I most recently worked with a B2B merchant who actually does personalization such as etching and embroidery. So not everyone's going to be able to see that type of product. However, whenever their customers do log in, they are going to be able to see that specific product that was created for them. Fax and email, of course. Email may be coming into play, but there are going to be automated quotes and self-serving orders. So if you have customers that want to be able to seamlessly repeat an order and make it frictionless, they'll be using solutions that can also help them with that quoting system as well. The lack of data-driven decision making. So you have the business intelligence and web analytics here. So with the different data solutions that may be built into your e-commerce platform, you can also identify and strategize to see what your business may be lacking, as well as doing well in. So if you can take a wave to see how you can continue to better from one piece, this is going to be a big one here. We also have the limited potential for growth, while you also have expanding to new markets. So if you are wanting to even use different omni-channels and marketplaces of your choice, depending on your industry, you do have the ability to do that. And of course, with the hybrid method, rather than heavily relying on sales reps to talk to the different businesses you may be working with, really just depending on what your business needs are, you can have the option for both your sales reps as well as online ordering. So if you are wanting to give your customers options as well as what you're capable of doing as a business, then this would be the best method right here. And then we have our frequently asked questions. So these are shared questions that typically have come up with not just the B2B merchants that I've worked with, but also my colleagues. So whether you're going to be migrating or planning to integrate, you have a few things here. So can you sell D2C and wholesale from one website? Can I show specific pricing to specific types of customers? So can your D2C customers see something different from your wholesale? Can I use an order management system, enterprise resource planning, also known as an ERP, or third-party logistics solution? You may be using some of these today. However, if you're interested in, I will be expanding a little bit more on what that could be utilized for. What payment gateway should you be using? Can you offer both shipping and delivery services? How do you accurately charge taxes? And then do you need a web developer or designer to create your store? So on the first piece here, we talk about segmenting your different customers. So if you have a D2C customer or wholesale customer, typically if you don't have this built in, there may be an application or solution within your e-commerce platform to go ahead and do that. So just allowing specific customers to view those categories that aren't visible for the public will be important. This could be maybe your cases, maybe different pricing for those customers, as well as segmenting those archetypes by wholesale relationships. So if you wanted to create something specifically with a company name, so rather than it just being retail or wholesale, maybe you'll have specifically which company that you're working with on there, as well as different price lists. On my end, I have worked with some alcohol businesses. That would include wine, liquor, as well as beer. So when it comes to those price lists, maybe you are only going to be able to show wine to those customers that are licensed for that. So it's really going to be helpful for you to be able to have those segmentations for you to display, as well as just making sure that you can identify who your new customers are, as well as who your old customers may be. And with this, right now, depending on what it's looking like, if you are capable of showing your customers any specific pricing, you can go ahead and throw that in here. This is coming from my test store here, but if you are wanting to do anything like have the pricing that's standard, whereas once somebody is logged in, maybe they see something else because they've negotiated different prices with you, that's something you'd be able to do, as well as just hiding that. So maybe for your own business needs, you may need to be specific about what prices you're showing for that particular customer. So with those different themes, you do have the ability to do that, as well as if it needs to be coded in. So as well as if you have any competitors and may not need to show the pricing just for that sake, this would be a great option for you to do that. And the big piece that we have here is just making sure that we can eliminate those manual processes. So about half of the B2Bs that I've seen and are using some type of back office solution. Some of the most popular ones are going to be ERPs as well as 3PLs. So what we have here are the inventory management systems, order management systems, enterprise resource planning, or third-party logistics solutions. So this is going to be a digital way of you to be able to organize anything on the back end for your customers. So for the OMS, this is basically going to follow the order's lifestyles, including ways to manage receiving orders, process payments, manage inventory when it begins to ship and track those orders, oversee returns, generate sales report, and then AI power predictions. With this, depending on what type of OMS you have, organizations can have real-time insight for that inventory, as well as customers can check when that order has also arrived. Those softwares are going to help you automate those manual processes. So commonly, I've seen some merchants still use spreadsheets, and it's basically killing them. And so when it comes to some of these softwares, it may be like within a higher range of budget. However, if it can help you with time, you will be able to put in more effort as well as energy into something that may be helping you grow your business in a different manner. So I would go ahead and suggest that if you are in the place to utilize it instead. And then from there, it's going to be clear for you to also predict what it is that you might be needing. This can also ensure that your customers are able to see the different products on your site as well. So if you are wanting to just have a one-stop shop, you do have your ERPs. And so a software that can be used by organizations would be one of this, and it does give you the day-to-day flow, which would include those information processes like taking your orders from your customers, updating the inventory when it's placed, the financial records when it comes to returns and refunds, reducing the numbers of manual processes. And so a popular one that's used by most of my merchants is going to be 𝐂𝐿matica. And it will be different just depending on which one you're needing. So that's just an example here. Oftentimes, most of our merchants may not even look at the order side on the BigCommerce end, but rather just the ERP. So if you think that you are going to have a struggle of going back and forth between your platform as well as the ERP, think of it as that one-stop shop. So that way you're not having to jump back and forth between tabs or whatever that may be. And as for the 3PLs, we have the third-party logistics. So this can be basically a 3PL is going to be your outsource to handle warehousing of your product. It manages the inventory as well as process all orders and payments. So it picks up and packs those orders from the warehouse, and then transportation is also going to be involved there. So for example, if you do have a warehouse potentially in SoCal, maybe one in Austin, wherever is going to make the most sense for that delivery, you may have a solution that's going to be required in order to use that as well. So that way, once that order is placed, it knows accurately where should it be placing that order from. With these back office solutions, just depending on if you're going to need to use it at any time, I'd say it's not necessarily something you have to have as soon as you launch your site, or if you plan to migrate your site. However, once you're ready for it, you want to take in consideration of predicting when is going to be a good time for that. With the implementation of some of these, it is going to take a little bit of time. So as well as teaching the rest of your team on how to utilize it may also need to be factored in. So the best recommendation I'd have for this is to get ahead. So if you do see a value in any of these back office solutions, go ahead and take a look at which ones might be something you need to go ahead and integrate in the future, because the last thing you want to do is have your business growing at a speed that where you're going to finally need one of this and it's just too late. Now, never too late, but it could be a bit chaotic if it's a bit in a scenario where there's too much going on already. So when it comes to removing the buying friction, you are going to want to capture inbound interest and make it easy. Submitting the application on your site can often be easier rather than reaching out to sales, as well as owning the marketing data and retarget those specific customers. So I know here you can't target your D2C customers, but it would be good to also see how you can continue to retain that relationship you also have with any of your wholesale customers. You'll also have the opportunity to continue with growing with SEO and your conversion rates to analyze that data to improve and grow and gain those customers. With this, we at BigCommerce do have a solution here called Bundle B2B. And oftentimes that is going to be utilized by a lot of the sales teams as well as on the other end for the buyers. And I'll be diving a little bit more into that here in a bit, but did want to touch base on it if you are wanting to see what type of applications can be utilized. We do have a customer example here. So natively, you will be able to, of course, have some type of option to go ahead and create an account. Now, when it comes to registration to become a customer on your store, maybe at this point, they're not part of that customer segmentation. And so when you do get that increase of registration, you may be able to identify that these are new B2B customers, new D2C, and then from there, kind of move forward to see where you need to place them. It does help eliminate the manual work and capture that data. So if you are seeing maybe an increase in a specific state, you can maybe take a look and gather and see what's going on there, if maybe your product has become more popular and having an increase in that section. If you are going to need more complex processes, there is going to be bundle B2B, like I mentioned. Right now, the biggest takeaway I could mention on that is that if your customers are wanting to have an option to quote within their end, basically this is going to be something that they'll see on when they log into your store, be able to quote from there, and then it gets sent over to your team. Along with that, there can be multiple buyers within that specific company. So for example, if there are 5 different maybe stores that are ordering from you, and that includes 5 different managers within each store, there could be a super user on there or super admin on there to go ahead and manage those 5 accounts. But then anybody who's going to go ahead and continue to place those orders would be those 5 managers. From there on your end, you can also assign your specific sales reps that maybe maintain that specific account. And then from there, take a look to see if that order is going to need to be placed or requoted. Other tools that are available for the end user and retailer are available. That's just an example from the big commerce end. So depending what's best suited for your company, I'd look into a solution that can help ease anytime your sales reps are going to need to work with a specific company, as well as if they are going to need to have different logins for each company.
Hey, Emily, I got a quick question on this.
Yeah.
So when designing the wholesale portals, do you see a lot of people kind of adopt a lot of principles from their D2C store in terms of like how they build the checkout page and order flow and everything, or is it much more call it like stripped down version of that typically?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at least with the merchants I've worked with closely, most of them, if they have a both D2C as well as B2B site, what they'll do is basically have maybe a different logo for that consistency. So that way, if maybe they'd have the login for pricing and a regular retail customers just clicking in and just wondering why they can't make that purchase. It's very clear that they're on the wrong site. And then from there, if they can't log in, there may be typically a web page for them to go ahead and take a look at. And then once they click that, they realize, okay, I'm on the wrong site. But there are often going to be portals. Maybe you're on the actual retail site for consumers. From there, there might be a web page that says join our wholesale group. So that's happened typically with maybe my CBD or vape sites. And so people from there, are more interested in joining into the business. Maybe it's people that have been, regular customers themselves and then want to expand from there. So from my experience, that's what I've seen. However, I can see that there be a mix up if people think that it's the same site. So to make it clear, I think the consistency is going to be important. So that way people know it's the same brand. It's just a matter of putting it out there to let them know that one is for wholesalers, whereas the other one's for consumers.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, so I've used sites like this for wholesale in the past. And one of the interesting things I've always found is that there's always a level of inbound interest that we never would have captured had we not had the option for people to sign up for a wholesale account. And so it's interesting in that it kind of captures some level of inbound interest. Controllable, of course. There's always a lot of, I will say for anyone on the call, like one of the things you got to watch out for is that there's a lot of people who will come as like Amazon resellers and want to try to access this. So if that's something that you're watching out for, make sure you have controls in place. But, because it's behind a registration wall, there's a lot of control that you have as a brand to manage who has access to it and who has access to, as Emma was saying, like what pricing. So it's been helpful in my experience to have this, just to capture the customers kind of coming to you proactively looking for an option to carry your product, a lot of independence and whatnot.
Perfect. Yeah. And yeah, just depending on which platform you're using, I know that on our end, we also, especially once the pandemic hit, a lot of the drop shippers were going directly and maybe not necessarily going through like a wholesale portal, but they're maxing out and just clearing up people's inventory. And so if you do have the option to go ahead and maybe limit the max on your consumer end, if you do have a D2C site, I'd recommend that. I usually recommend that even to my merchants that are not B2B, just due to the fact that if there's a potential of somebody buying out your stock, it's probably a good thing, but also at the same time, if you're dealing with distributor issues, manufacturer issues, anything like that, if you could set that max, it wouldn't hurt.
Awesome.
Right. So from here, you can customize this, of course. So if you are going to be using a generator and maybe implement this with HTML, you typically do that with most of your web pages, as well as maybe use the native features. So that way, if you need to put anything like specific, maybe you need to get their tax code, licensing, anything like that, you'll be able to do that on the account level. So I spoke a little bit on HTML. I think the biggest misconception a lot of times whenever you are starting your e-commerce site or just maintaining it in general is that you need a developer to design it. That's not going to be the case here. With most platforms that are catering to B2B, they will have partnerships to go ahead and have specific themes for that. So if you saw the login option for pricing, as well as, making it to where it's catered towards B2B, if you have a larger catalog as well as maybe a smaller catalog, you'll want to look into those designs. If it's already created for you, you might as well use it unless you are needing to have customization to get started with. And then from there, you can build off. Oftentimes, if you do also purchase a theme, you can custom code it from there and fix it to where it comes to your likings, as well as fit maybe your business themes, fonts, anything like that. So some of the tools that are going to be available, at least on BigCommerce, are going to be Page Builder, and that's going to help you create those banners and widgets. Oftentimes, you can even create maybe a button that says visit our consumer site, or if you are a wholesaler, visit our wholesale site. So building off of what Peter asked about, definitely would be good to make it clear that you do have two options, unless you're in the end where you're not necessarily trying to sell to consumers quite yet, and just make sure you keep it specifically catered to those wholesalers. And then from there, if you do see more people contacting you just wanting to purchase direct, that'll be a good indicator to take into consideration if you need to open your site to both, or if you want to create a specific one for your consumers. And when it comes to making it easy to pay and manage your taxes, there are going to be lots of methods that you will have options for. So if you are typically going to be using net terms or POs, make sure that you do have the option for that. Says most wholesalers or anybody that are going to continue to purchase from you may have that option. However, if maybe you have a different business that's just specifically wanting to use credit cards, you can have that open to them. On BigCommerce, we do have a solution that would allow you to only allow specific payment methods for some of your customers. So if you do have customers that you would never accept a credit card from, I would look into a solution that can give you that option. Rather than customizing and custom coding your checkout page, it may be a good idea to take a look and see if that's available, as well as just making sure that if a specific company or group needs to have that PO, that when they get to the checkout page, that's the only thing they see, whereas maybe other customers would typically see the credit card option. Digital wallets are definitely going to be encouraged. So again, just depending on the size of these businesses that are ordering from you, they have the option to go ahead and get that cart purchased and then no longer abandon it. It'll be good for them to have any seamless option to go ahead and make that payment. We also do have automatic tax providers. If you're not using one of these already, this could potentially help you out whenever it comes to particular states. Taxes is definitely a fun one. So if, you have the headache of, trying to keep up specifically with what taxes work for a specific state, then the automatic tax such as Avalara or Vertex would be a good option for you to utilize. So that way it's automatically pulling out how much it should be for that particular customer, regardless of if the taxes is based off of your state or theirs. And we do have a large ecosystem of our top B2B specific partners here. Now, a lot of these partners are going to be some of the most promising third-party providers that are in the market right now. So if you take a look here, you may end up using just a couple of these as well as maybe multiple. So with this, there's a chance that you might be using an EDI as well as the shipping and logistics, or in combination, you could be using a quote management system with an ERP. So it does give you lots of flexibility and room to grow here. So if you do end up needing to add this along, I'd look for a solution that's similar to any of these that would connect to your site.
That's a great slide, Emmeline.
Yeah, I could pop back on there.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely, I mean, we'll send the presentation out and the recording of that. But this is also just a great map of like all the potential partners that you may, want to think about engaging depending on kind of where you're at as a business.
Yep. And to that, I mean, depending on what platform you're using, a lot of these do integrate with WooCommerce and Shopify. So there may be particular partners that do work with BigCommerce, but if there's any of these that do stand out in your mind, especially with the omni-channel, if you're wanting to grow that way, I would take a look at that for your business. And then just that room to grow with BigCommerce. You do have the option to be a small business, mid-market, and enterprise. I know that some of the B2B clients that I've worked with are not interested in growing their business quite yet, just because if it happens overnight, if there's an influencer who talks about a particular product on TikTok, it just may not be something they can keep up to speed with. So with that, at the end of the day, if you are wanting to grow as fast as possible and reach those goals, you aren't going to be alone on the BigCommerce end. We do have expertise in both serving D2C as well as wholesale customers. So for me, the biggest takeaways that we can do to support you is just that we do have a 24/7 support system, as well as 365 days a year. I personally have background in support here at BigCommerce, so there were days that I did end up working a few holidays, and some of our merchants were preparing for those big sales. So if you were needing some guidance and hoping to, hop on a phone call or chat with someone just to see what you can have running as a promotion, we would be available for you. So that's one of my favorite things, and it has helped a lot of people out, especially if you have that one thought in mind and it's trying to keep you up at night. Hopefully you wouldn't have that case, but if you needed to pick up the call and call at 2 a.m., we'd be able to help you out. Additional services that you do have to grow here at BigCommerce would be with an e-commerce growth coach like myself. So I mentioned we have launch packages that do serve in a variety of sizes. So if you are just wanting to get the lay of the land of BigCommerce, that's where I come into play. If you've been on BigCommerce for some time, whether that be 6 months up to 10 years, we would be able to do SEO and conversion audits to see where you're currently at, as well as see where you can continue to better in. From those takeaways, you won't necessarily see just bad things. You could potentially be able to appreciate what you've been doing well on and seeing how you can do that on all platforms for yourself. We also have customer success managers and implementation project managers. So customer success managers are going to be without you throughout the journey of BigCommerce, and then your implementation project managers would help you launch if you choose this. And so I have that. If we have any questions here, I did want to leave that open for everybody. Both Peter and I can take a look and see what is it that you may have any questions about, as well as anything I may have spoken on.
Yeah, and if there's any questions, go ahead and throw them in the Q&A section. We'll get to them. But Emmeline, this was super, super helpful. I know that it's been really helpful for me to have a site like this. I lead retail for a brand, and while a lot of it happens offline, it's always great to be able to capture, especially that inbound interest, and especially when you have people using the site, it just takes a huge load off the rest of the team in terms of communication and fulfillment and manual order entry. So it is really nice to have this as a mechanism that I think brands should be just paying attention to and have as kind of something in their back pocket.
Yeah, and in the manual processes, it's really interesting to see how people approach that. Some people will take manual orders, just because that's just what they're most comfortable with. And we still have that ability to do that, but we will try to push them to make their life a bit easier if it just takes one back office system that they haven't already been using. But feel free to ask any questions, whether it's regarding B2B or big commerce.
Here we got one. This is right up your alley, I bet, Emmeline. Can a Wix site be transferred over to BigCommerce? What does it look like to transition something over to BigCommerce from another platform?
Yeah, we have had plenty of Wix sites transfer over to BigCommerce. So just depending if you already have a checkout option or if it's just standard to where it's just a website, we would be able to help integrate with that. We do also have a data migration team. So depending on how large your catalog is also, we do have services for that. We do have partnerships too that could help assist with it if it's more on the line of like your theme. I usually suggest if you have some customization in mind already, you can go ahead and take a look to see if this is something that you can do yourself or get started with, and then maybe hire out somebody for those customizations. And the link that I do have up here as well does bring you to a free trial. So you do have a 7-day trial to kind of play around and see if there's something that could help out with. And then you do have the ability to call our support team to kind of ask more questions once you start that trial.
Awesome. Anything else, Emily?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've had many merchants call multiple times when I was in support asking like, how can you set me up? It usually gets started with page builder and then just the ability to kind of get an idea that they can actually still have orders as well as applications that can assist with them. So yeah, we basically are an open book when it comes to our support. And if you are, kind of wanting to gauge out and have more questions on there.
Awesome. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions at the moment. I will say, and maybe this is just a broad call, Emmeline's got a lot of experience working with brands, both on the wholesale B2B side, but also direct to consumer. So if we have a few extra minutes here, if anyone has any burning questions regarding D2C portions of their website or Webflow, we can put her on the spot a little bit maybe and answer some of those potentially. But if not, we can always wrap early and give everyone about 20 minutes back.
Yeah, and if you have any high risk potentially, whether it's CBD, alcohol, anything like that, feel free to ask. I have worked with many merchants that are within that area as well.
Awesome. So we've got a question from Fernando about BigCommerce. So Fernando's asking about whether BigCommerce is specifically designed to sell wholesale and direct to consumer. I'll let Emmeline answer. I will just say, BigCommerce is one of the big competitors in the space to a Shopify, a Wix. So if you're looking for a place where you can build out kind of your whole soup to nuts needs as a CPG website, they're a really great option. Emmeline, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I specifically work on a team with those launch packages, as I mentioned. Because of the increase of B2B merchants that have came to BigCommerce, we created a package specifically for B2B. And so that being said, we are seeing an influx of B2B merchants come, and that just goes along with the fact that we have catered more towards B2B. Now, we are open to both D2C as well as wholesale. However, we have a lot of focuses on growing our B2B area. So that way we have all types of industries that can join. With the multi-storefront feature that we recently launched this year, this is something that has helped with inventory when it comes to pushing both B2B together as well as the direct-to-consumer site. So just depending on how you would utilize this, if it's just going to be specifically B2B, we have plenty of functionality and solutions for you, whether that be on the app marketplace, as well as any of the people that would be working with you.
Awesome. We got another question from Janet here. Can you talk about how you can password protect your wholesale site? Is that something that's kind of out of the box feature?
So password protection, I guess to kind of, if I understand this correctly, are we looking to make sure that it's specifically like a password that you need in order to enter your site?
So Janet, correct me if I'm misinterpreting this. My guess is that for anyone who's got like a direct to consumer facing site and they want to have that second storefront just for their wholesale retail business, it's gonna, they want to make sure that they can protect that and make it not accessible unless someone's approved. So what's the kind of account control aspect to make sure that if someone wants to access the wholesale site, they have, the controls in place to make sure that only the approved people are accessing it?
Yep, that's a great question. So there's two things I can answer on that, on the bundle B2B end, as well as the native features on BigCommerce. When it comes to segmenting those customer groups, you do have the ability, and let me see if I have that here. So I don't have a picture of it. However, we do have a knowledge base article on this, and it's specifically going to go ahead and show you that when it comes to segmenting those customer groups, you have the ability to manage a registered customer group as well as guest. Now, with those registered customers, just because they created an account on your site doesn't necessarily mean they have access to purchase, because you can basically turn off all the categories that they were originally able to see on the public end before they created that account. So even once they created that, the nice thing about this is that they're already going to be in a customer group that you as the merchant can take a look at to reach out to them or your sales team. And then from there, they don't have the access to go ahead and make that purchase. So that would be the native feature. And then from there, they would basically lose ability. It's a little confusing because they may think, why did I lose all of these options to go ahead and make this purchase? But that just really restricts them to make sure that they do not have the ability to make the purchase without approval. On the bundle B2B end, they can still create and register an account. However, when it comes to bundle B2B, you do have to approve and add them into your system to be able to become an actual company that you're selling to. So if you do have a specific price list for those customers, then from there, you do have the access to make sure they're not only on your BigCommerce store, but within the application that you'd be using for maybe the system for quoting, as well as if you do have a sales rep that's going to connect specifically to that company. So you do have the full ability to make sure that they don't make this purchase. However, if it comes to making sure that you are wanting to protect them, they just can't see your site, there would be an option for you to also just have an application rather than a registration button. And so then from there, they would just go ahead and apply, get thrown into the group. And that would just maybe take some coding. So that way it doesn't look like they're necessarily just registering, but applying instead.
And just to build on that, one of the ways, so I've actually used both of those mechanics in the past. And, the first thing you said, how, you have to kind of add them essentially to a customer group in order to access to a certain collection of products. That's how I've managed access to the wholesale, our wholesale catalog in the past. And then building on top of that, I've also used multiple customer groupings to manage brokers, to give them the opportunity to order car stock directly. So if you have brokers who you want to give access to a secondary catalog at a different price point, i.e. potentially free with some controls to make sure that they don't over order, that's a mechanism that I've employed through a wholesale portal to provide access to certain broker reps and give them an opportunity to order directly so that I don't actually ever have to interact with that manual order process of sending samples out to our trusted broker representation. So that's, you know, just another example of like one of the ways that having something like this set up can potentially just ease some of the burden of like the day-to-day manual processes that you might be dealing with as, you know, someone who's managing a wholesale business, especially if you have different types of customer segments. And even, you know, I use the word customer a little bit loosely there because obviously brokers are a little bit different than a retail customer, but essentially, you know, there's a process there to eliminate some of the friction with getting them what they need as a representative of the brand. So it's another example of how I've used certain things in the past. There might even be cases where you want to make certain sales collateral only available to certain customers or customer groups or brokers. And so again, just another way I've kind of managed the customization within a tool like this to enable that sort of hands-off approach to kind of still getting what I need out to the brokers. Awesome. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other additional questions at this time. Thank you so much, Emmeline. For those on the call, we will send the recording out as well as the presentation within the next day or two. And if you have any follow-up questions, I'm sure Emmeline is happy to hear those. Feel free to jump over to the BigCommerce link here as well if you're interested in checking out BigCommerce.
Thanks, Peter. It was a pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone.